The following program is a SUTV student production. The views expressed are not necessarily those of Salisbury University, the University System of Maryland, its regents, administration, officers, employees, or representatives.
Good evening and welcome to Sports Night. I'm Travis Nardella, joined as always by Christopher Makoviak, Will Ovington, and Matthew Forney. You guys ready for our hour and a half long swimming special tonight?
Woo! Yeah.
Just kidding. We're going to start tonight with men's basketball. I was kind of hoping that you would have looks of fear on your face after that. Didn't work out. We're going to start talking about men's basketball. Thanks, Will.
Yeah.
Men's basketball off to a pretty good start. 5-1, unfortunately lost to Christopher Newport, but we're going to start with their game last Tuesday against Virginia Wesleyan. First home game of the year, only home game up to this point, against the number 2 team in the country, and they won. They had 5 players in double figures for points, with Gordon Jeter leading with 14. So, what do you guys think of the men's basketball team so far? They're off to a pretty hot start.
I think this new scheme that this coach has brought in, Sachs, he's done a fantastic job. His team caused 22 turnovers in that win against Virginia Wesleyan. Big statement against the number 2 team, builds confidence. They also had 22 points off turnovers, so those 22 turnovers, essentially they scored a point per turnover, which is good because you got to capitalize on those turnovers. If you can't, then you're just having missed opportunities. Mm-hmm. I like what they've done. I wasn't sure how this coach was going to transition-wise, and with Wyatt being out, how much that would hurt. But it seems like Jeter has played like his freshman year. He had a sophomore slump, per se, last year, and being overshadowed by Wyatt, per se. But great front court we have with, both of them, hopefully Wyatt getting an extra year of eligibility, and with Jeter being a senior next year, that will have the most dominant front court in the conference. So I'm excited for the future of this team.
Yeah, and you look at it all on paper. Rebounding battle, they won 41-29, and then 14 steals, just 11 turnovers. Clearly it's working so far. At that point, they were 5-0, and it's actually pretty sad because that was the Tuesday night before Thanksgiving, and not many fans could really come out because most students going home, but a huge win and really something to build on as the season goes on.
Mm-hmm. And just touching off of what Matt said about causing the turnovers, this new system that he's brought in, this high-pressure D, it's been working very well as we can see as of late. It takes time off the clock, especially with that new 30-second shot clock in men's basketball. That's going to be a pretty good thing to do. If you can take even 7 or 8 seconds in that backcourt when they're bringing the ball up, just to get something in their head that they need to rush this possession, and then causing the turnovers and getting those points off the turnovers. If they can keep this up, I know they had a little bit of a setback against Christopher Newport, and we're going to touch on that a little bit, obviously. But if they can keep up what they did against Virginia Wesleyan, then we should be in for one heck of a season.
And one last thing I've noticed is in their 5 wins, 2 of them have been 1-point wins, so they know how to win in close games. Mm-hmm. And the first win, Adrian Strong had to hit 2 free throws, like Wyatt had to win the conference last year. So close games haven't fazed them yet. And then their 3 other wins have been by double digits, so they know how to win by close games as well as by a good margin of victory.
Mm-hmm. And now, going back to the Christopher Newport game that was last night, Christopher Newport also ranked in the top 25. They came in at 21. Salisbury debuted at 17 this week. Unfortunately lost 71-60. Christopher Newport, a very tough place to play, just like Salisbury. These 2 teams, they're probably going to be the top 2 teams in the conference come February, March. And it's going to be down to whoever has home court advantage because 2 very tough places to play. They'll play each other later in the year at Salisbury. So what do you think went wrong for Salisbury last night? For CNU, Aaron McFarland, 27 points off the bench for the captains.
That right there, CNU has that X factor with McFarland, 27 points. next meeting, I'm sure they're going to want to focus on limiting him because you take away 10 or 11 of those points, and it's a much closer ball game as they lost by 11. So they got to capitalize on and shut down the players that are getting hot or getting momentum in the game, because that can swing it for that team.
And just starting the game for Salisbury, a 9-2 run, and then CNU just ate away at that lead the entire rest of the game until into the second half. They got on an 11-0 run and then just built on from that. Luckily, Salisbury was able to stay in the game a little bit, but then just gave it up in the end. It was really just finishing overall, but CNU, 11-point differential in their favor for second chance scoring. That offensive rebounding, that had to be a difference in that game.
Yeah, and were you going to say something, Will?
Actually, just carrying off what he said. Excuse me. Rebounds lead to second chance scoring, and there's a big differential, 10 rebound differential between Salisbury and Christopher Newport. And then, like he said, that 11-point swing in the second chance points. You take away 11 of those second chance points, and it's a tie ball game. So if they can get it done, rebounding the ball, preventing those offensive rebounds for Christopher Newport, I think it's going to be a completely different ball game.
Do you think any cause for concern from this loss? Road game, conference, tough atmosphere. Do you think there's any concern for the Seagulls?
Not at all. The way they've been playing this year so far with the 5 wins, off to a good start under a new head coach, they just went into a tough place to play, and luckily, they just didn't have enough to win that night. Like you said, the 11 rebound differential did them in.
Mm-hmm. Early in the season, good to have those mistakes now and build on it for the future, especially meeting up with CNU later on.
Yeah, they have a game this Saturday at Frostburg State, and then they finally return home next Wednesday against Penn State University Harrisburg for only their second home game of the season. But now, we don't, no home games in the past week and a half, really, so no formal highlights tonight. But what we do have is a very special top 5 plays of the semester between all sports. So let's take a look at that right now. Coming in at number 5, we have a volleyball match against Frostburg State. Katie Stouffer recorded a game-high 29 kills, which also tied for 6th in program history. 4 kills in a match. Salisbury won in 4 sets. Now number 4, football against Southern Virginia. This is just one of Salisbury's 13 touchdowns on the afternoon. On their way to a 91-7 victory, Salisbury set program records for points in a game, touchdowns in a game, and margin of victory. Now on to number 3, field hockey CAC semifinals versus the team we all love to hate, Christopher Newport. Becca Ronica gets the steal, took it past every single defender, found Jessica Crew in the center of the circle for the goal. That would prove to be the game winner in the 2-1 victory. Now, number 2, men's soccer against Merchant Marine Academy. Some nifty one-touch play there leads to this Leslie Umuna goal. And would you look at the celebration he has right here? That should be a top play on its own. And oh, by the way, that was Jerry DiMartillo's 400th career victory. And now the number 1 play of the semester, down 27-21 in the Regents Cup, 4th and 15. Ryan Jones finds Isaiah Taylor, who makes a stellar one-handed grab. And we all know how this one ends with a NJAC championship and the 28-27 victory. So, for you guys, what was your favorite play in that top 5?
I think my favorite part of that was the 1 of 13 touchdowns in that one game. Just that was 92 points.
91?
91, sorry. Giving a little too much credit. But that entire game was just absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, I remember calling that game. That was my first ever football game announcing for the Seagull Sports Network, and it was fun.
Had quite the busy afternoon.
Yeah. Matt, what was your
my
favorite?
favorite play, I'm going to be a little biased. I'm going to have to say DiBartolo's 400th win, but that Isaiah Taylor catch is arguably the best play of the year for Salisbury sports. That's going to be tough to beat considering the circumstance. Conference on the line, rivalry game on the line, and Ryan Jones scrambles to get out of that pocket, and then Isaiah Taylor makes that one-handed catch.
And it's 4th down.
And 4th and 15.
Yeah, 4th and 15.
Where Salisbury runs 90% of the time and they throw it on 4th down. It's going to be tough to beat. But I like the DiBartolo 400th win because it's a huge milestone.
Chris?
Yeah, as much as I love the DiBartolo win and getting to announce that game and the entire season for the men's soccer, that Frostburg State win for Salisbury coming back that entire game and winning that on Taylor, just an incredible game, the MVP of that game. How can you deny that? Just incredible what he did in the clutch situations, and also Jones at quarterback. Just probably the best moment of this fall, if not for the 400th win, of course.
All right, so now we're going to go to the other basketball team. Women's basketball, also off to a 5-1 start. Not many people thought this would happen. You know, they were predicted, bottom middle of the conference preseason. Lost Anna Hackett and Sarah Sipe, their clear two best players, two leading scorers from a season ago. They're off to a 5-1 start. Their one loss last week against Stevenson on the road, 47-41. Julia McLaughlin had 18 points. And before we get to talking about the CNU game, do you think Julia McLaughlin can be this team leader? She's averaging 19 points per game, on a team where there is no clear-cut leading scorer.
I think she has stepped into that role, even if, she hasn't verbally come out or the team hasn't. When you lead your team in scoring, you're looked at as the go-to person. And she had 27 against Christopher Newport, and they scored 54 in that win. So she scored half the team's points in that win and had a career day. I think she's accepted it and taken it on, and it's proven well so far, averaging 19 points.
The problem is that when she doesn't perform, she's in foul trouble. This team's in trouble. Against Methodist, she was in foul trouble early second quarter, and it was hard to find answers. They were barely staying in that game, and luckily Methodist missed 6 free throws in overtime, and that's basically why that's a win on the stat sheet.
All right, now on to the game against Christopher Newport. 54-48 victory, putting them 1-0 in Capital Athletic Conference play, 5-1 overall. McLaughlin, like you said, 27 points. She was the only player to score double figures. The second leading scorer had 9. So what about that game? Do you think, scoring half the points is great, but do you think that could be a cause for concern? Because like Chris said, when she gets into foul trouble, then the team can be in trouble.
For sure, it's got to be a little worrisome, just like you said, because if you're scoring 27 points and you're scoring half your team's points, as a coach, that means, and your second leading scorer scores 9, that's the third of the remaining points. Those two combined right there, that's more than obviously half your points, and it's a concern that you got to find something to get your offense going, because there might be a game where McLaughlin can't score or can't play due to injury, or for whatever reason just is off, like we've discussed. You got to have that next person up mentality of, okay, who can we feed the ball to so it doesn't all fall on her shoulders.
I think this definitely shows both how important Julia is to this team and how much the rest of the team definitely needs to step up. Because if you're the only person breaking double digits in a game where you're scoring half the points, something's got to give. And she has to – it's definitely not on Julia. It's definitely, I think, more on the team as a whole. Somebody else has to be able to step up. Somebody has to get in that mindset that if Julia can't play, if she's having a rough game, if she's getting into the foul trouble, she needs to be able to step up. So somebody has to come ahead and be that number 2, because it is very apparent to me that Julia's definitely the number 1.
Yeah, last year, we say this all the time, Sipe and Hackett, they fed off each other so well. If one of them had a bad game, the other one had an even better game. And then they also had several support players. McLaughlin was a support player last year. They had Courtney McManus, several others I can't think of off the top of my head, but Kathy Albornoz. They had 3 or 4 support players to go along with Hackett and Sipe. Very different team this year, and lower scoring team this year. We talked about this a little bit before we came on air. A little bit different format this year for women's college basketball. 4 10-minute quarters instead of 2 20-minute halves. No difference at all in the time. But do you think that's having a little bit of a factor in why they're scoring less points?
I think so, because I mentioned it pre-show, is that if a team goes on a run in its last 2 minutes and then that quarter stops play, it stops momentum for that team in a sense. So you got to rebuild that going in. Whereas last year and years before, you had 20 minutes before halftime. And now with 2 10-minute quarters on each side, you got to be aware of the time situation, so that way you're not necessarily getting into the swing of things with 4 minutes left to go in a quarter, and then you have to stop, take a little break, come back on. So I think it's hurting them in a sense, because it's not letting them establish the flow. But we got to wait a full season before we can officially say if it's good or not for college basketball.
Yeah, we have to get used to it, but it just feels like the game's going fast, but it's segmented more. And something with coach's philosophy is something about the momentum. If it gets down to 1 minute left in the quarter, third quarter, and you want to keep possession and you have to get momentum into the second or fourth quarter, are you going to use those timeouts then and to keep the ball and try to get a shot off, make a major three-pointer? And that's going to be something to see as the season goes on.
And we'll see how it goes on in the season. That's all the time we have for tonight. For Chris Makoviak, Will Ovington, Matt Forney, I'm Travis Novella. Have a great night, everybody, and a great weekend.